Okay, I've just been informed if anyone is trying to get on the internet through the BOE website, I guess there's a problem with their server. So, it's not your problem. It's over there somewhere. Okay, good evening, everyone. My name's Ed Bateson. I am chairman of LNA, and I think we are going to start this off. I'm sorry, I don't have anything in writing. It's a labor agreement, a settlement between the mid-managers union and the town of Fairfield. And I think we didn't get an actual resolution for the call, did we? We just got the tentative agreement, and everyone should have received that this afternoon. So we're going to start off with that, and the presenters are going to be Pat McHale or Mary Carroll, or both. Okay, come on up. In a brief history, this was the one that was turned down about 18 months ago by the RTM, if I'm not mistaken? Or a year ago?
April 2011.
Okay. Can you give us the history on that? Thanks.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for inviting me to speak to you. I'm coming tonight to speak to you about another settlement that we've reached with one of the 7 town bargaining units. Here to ask that you consider the settlement favorably and approve it so that we can move on to negotiating the successor to this settlement, which will expire, this settlement, on June 30, 2013, a few months from now. This is a contract that applies to your middle management bargaining unit, also known as your professional technical group. Approximately 42 employees in this bargaining unit. This contract expired on June 30, 2010, like so many others I've brought before you before this evening. A settlement was originally reached on this contract on April 26, 2011. It was rejected on May 23, 2011. When I looked at the minutes of the RTM meeting at which it was rejected, although it's never clear exactly why individuals may have voted against, the vocal comments to the rejection dealt with a particular specific pension benefit enhancement that was allotted to one bargaining unit employee. The parties have since gone back to the table and reached a settlement on March 18th, 2013, so not long ago. We weren't sure if we were going to be meeting before you tonight because we were unsure if this settlement was going to be approved by the union. At 2 o'clock this afternoon, I learned it was approved by the bargaining unit, thankfully, and I appreciate their doing so. And now I take it to you for your consideration. I'm not sure what has been presented to you prior to my arrival tonight, but what I will do is review the terms of the settlement agreement with you to be sure you understand the terms that were reached. With regard to wages, in the first year of the contract, which is July 1, 2010 through June 30, 2011, for the first 6 months of the contract, there was a wage freeze. No wages, no wage rates under the terms of the contract would increase. Effective January 1, 2011, employees would receive a 1% general wage increase. Effective July 1, 2011, 6 months later, employees would receive another 1% increase, so that's the first 6 months of the second year of this agreement. And on January 1, 2012, which is the second 6 months of the second year of this 3-year agreement, employees will receive a 1.5% general wage increase. So that's a 1% increase in the first year, 6 months into the settlement year, a 2.5% increase in the second year combined, and then in the last year, effective July 1, 2012, which is about 9 months ago, employees will receive under the terms of the settlement a 3% general wage increase. Step increases under this contract by contract are awarded at the time that someone earns a step. Those steps have already been paid out. They were paid out as a matter of contract language. They weren't in dispute in the negotiation, so anyone It's a very narrow schedule. It's 4 steps and then 3 longevity steps. Anyone who was eligible for a step increase during the last 3 years got their step increase, despite the fact that there was no settlement, because the contract automatically, under its current terms, calls for step increases to be awarded. The parties agreed that for new hires, there'll be a new starting rate. That new starting rate of pay for all positions will be 9% lower than what the starting rate is for entry-level positions at all grades today. So there was some mutual agreement that for new hires, when you hire them, that their starting rate will be dramatically less than what their starting rate would have been under the contract that's expiring, and it will be 9% less. But that will now add a new step to the salary schedule that will be dealt with in terms of future increases. In terms of medical benefits, you've heard me talk about this multiple times. Essentially, the employees have agreed, like the other employees who have come before you, in terms of settlements that we've reached, and that's all but one bargaining unit now, the Public Works unit, and have agreed to modestly, I think is the fairest way to put it, change the co-pays on their preferred provider organization benefits. You provide benefits to town employees under a PPO plan, and under a PPO plan, there's first dollar coverage, there's no upfront deductible, and when employees incur a service, they pay a copay. And for all the bargaining units in town, when negotiations with these 7 unions began in 2010, the only medical insurance plan design change that was ever proposed was to tweak these copays. So for an office visit copay, the copay will go from $10 to $20. For a hospital copay, a hospital visit will go from $100 to $150. For an urgent care visit, the copay goes from $25 to $50. For an emergency room visit, the copays will go from $50 to $100. And there are others. The prescription drug copays go up, and you can see it. I won't bore you with the incidentals. But I view these changes as kind of tweaking, modestly changing what employees will pay for services. But they're the same changes, relatively speaking, that other bargaining units have been asked to absorb. They will save some modest amount of premium costs going forward, but not dramatically. The bargaining unit has agreed to those tweaking of copays, assuming ratification of this agreement. They also agreed, as have all the other bargaining units, that dependents for retiree medical insurance coverage will be limited to dependents who were dependents at the time of retirement. The days of adding dependents to your post-employment medical insurance benefits after you've retired are gone, and for this bargaining unit as well. Probably the most significant change from my perspective is, and you've dealt with this with other units, rather than contribute to the cost of medical insurance on a flat dollar basis, okay, employees coming into this night are paying $29 per week towards the cost of medical insurance. That amounts to $1,508 per year. As part of this settlement, employees will pay a percentage of the cost of the benefit, so that as the cost of the benefit goes up, their contributions will go up, as opposed to being stuck at a fixed number until such time as you negotiate a higher fixed number. So they'll pay, effective upon ratification, 11% of what the blended rate is under your self-insured plan. So if you took all the costs that go into funding your medical insurance plan, divided by the number of plan participants, you get a per employee blended rate, and they'll pay 11% of that rate. Just to give you an idea of how that changes the cost contribution, 11% for current employees is 11% of $23,351, or $2,569, which is an increase of $1,062 in contributions to medical. So that's what I consider to be the most significant economic change that is part of this deal. For employees who are hired after the time you ratify this settlement, assuming you choose to ratify this settlement, as I am urging you to do, since this contract will expire shortly, those employees will pay $3,035 at the current blended rate formula. Now, that blended rate formula is going to go up, as it does for everybody's medical insurance every year, but $3,035.62 is an additional $1,527 per year, as contrasted with the $1,508 that employees are paying previous to this agreement. So getting employees to a percentage of premium costs is a significant and important development for the town for a variety of reasons. One, because it allows the town to absorb more employee contributions to offset some of the town's very high costs for medical insurance, but also because it changes the mindset of our labor force, frankly, such that they have a reason to be concerned about medical insurance premium costs in the future, since their costs will rise as the costs of premiums rise, as contrasted with under our old or former system where employees were paying a fixed dollar amount per week. $29 a week, it doesn't matter to you if premium costs go up 40% because you're paying $29 per week. If you're paying 11% of that 40% increase, well, now it matters to you. And from my perspective, it matters in collective bargaining because the unions and the workers they represent have a vested interest to look at plan design to save premium costs, the lion's share of which will continue to be paid under this settlement by the town, but now a percentage of which will be paid by employees. So that's clearly the most significant financial concession that's part of this settlement. There have been in every one of the contracts some concessions on paid time off. In this contract, the concession on paid time off is employees who don't take sick days earn perfect attendance days, up to 2 a year. Those have been removed from the contract effective upon ratification. So there'll be no more right to earn perfect attendance days under the sick leave article of the contract. Under the workers' compensation benefit, the contract the settlement includes language that says no one will earn while out on workers' compensation leave more than they were earning while working. Now, that doesn't sound like a revolutionary thing to anyone. How can the opposite ever occur? But all I could say is you'd be surprised. The most important thing in terms of everything that I've witnessed in terms of the RTM's concern deals with post-employment retirement benefits and the desire on the part of the RTM to obtain some cost control on your future costs for pension benefits. And as part of this settlement, the union came to the table and agreed that following ratification, new hires in this bargaining unit will not participate in the defined benefit pension plan. They will participate in a 401A plan. Employees must contribute at least 4% of their base pay. They can contribute more, up to the maximum amounts allowed by law, but can't contribute less. And if they contribute 4%, the town will match up to 4% of base pay and longevity in lieu of any contribution to the defined benefit pension plan. That has been a major point of contention as I understand it. In each of these negotiations, we talked at great length the last time we were together about why the terms of the settlement that had been reached with the police didn't make economic sense as it was structured under the terms of that settlement. They do make economic sense for this group, which is already a participating group in Social Security benefits, and so that is part of the settlement. And that concludes the essence of what is the settlement between the town of Fairfield and the mid-management, otherwise known as Professional Technical Group, for a contract, I'll remind you, covering the period of July 1, 2010 through June 30, 2013.
Great, thank you, Attorney McHale. We are going to open up the floor to questions relating to the agreement. Do we have any questions? Yes, David.
David McKenzie, District 3. Just a question on the salary. If new people are starting out at 9% less, does that imply that the pay rate for the people in place is high? And if so, why are we giving raises?
Well, it certainly implies, Mr. McKenzie, that the starting rates of pay are high, since the starting rates of pay are the ones that both parties agreed, for whatever reason, should be reduced. There certainly isn't consensus that rates other than the starting rates are high, because there have been negotiated raises.
Do we compare their salary at all to private industry?
Well, to the extent that we are involved in negotiations with a group, we compare their salaries to private industry, but more importantly, we compare their salaries to comparable positions within our labor market. This is not a group that I have had the privilege of having collective bargaining negotiations with. When I was hired to represent the town of Fairfield, as I indicated at the outset, the proposals had already been drafted and a settlement had already been reached. The issue was putting together the best possible package many months after the contract had expired to reach a settlement that makes good sense and to position us to deal with the future. The settlement does include the raises it includes, because those were the settlements that were reached at the time. There's no reduction in any of these percentages from what was agreed upon in April 2011. In answer to your question, the fact that the parties agreed that the starting rates would go down by 9% certainly reflects a mutual agreement that the starting rates are high. The fact that the parties agreed that there'd be some increases more modest than the 4 years of 3% that took place under the last contract, the contract that covered the period of July 1, 2006 through June 30, 2010 occurred, but still increases, reflects the fact that the parties believed that some increases for people at the higher end were in order.
Okay, just a couple more. The 11%, is that still considered to be less than half of the private sector? The 11% towards the medical?
Well, certainly the private sector employees contribute more than double 11% of premium costs. But again, there are two issues we need to focus on when we deal with medical insurance costs. One is, what is the cost of the benefit? Meaning, what kind of benefit are we offering? What are the controls on cost? Are there deductibles? Is it a first dollar coverage type plan? The private sector is far in a far different place than the public sector, Fairfield included, in terms of plan design. And the private sector, frankly, is far ahead in terms of employee contribution to cost, not just premium costs, but utilization costs, copay costs, and deductible costs. Most private sector employees now, probably not most, but at least 40% of private sector employees have a deductible component to their plan. And frankly, significant headway is being made in the public sector toward a deductible plan, a high deductible health plan with a health savings account. That's the trend. It certainly has been the trend for the last 5 years to 7 years in the private sector. It's increasingly the trend in the public sector.
Okay. How about medical in retirement? Was that discussed at all?
Was it discussed?
Yeah. In other words, it stays the same?
It was discussed, but other than dealing with the issues associated with dependents and how dependents come on and when they become eligible for the plan, there wasn't significant progress made with regard to that benefit with regard to this group.
Okay.
The focus was on the 401A plan as a replacement for new hires to the defined benefit pension plan.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions relating to the contract? Eric?
Mark Patton, District 7. How many people are in this particular unit as far as employees go?
Ms. Miralles will know for sure, but I believe it's somewhere between 40 and 45.
Okay. And is there, we always ask this kind of round question, is there a total dollar amount in savings that you can estimate between the 2011 version and the current version?
I can't give you a total savings when you add, if you compare the additions to the benefit under the wage increases to what the savings are for the medical insurance plan and what the savings are from taking new employees long-term and putting them on a defined contribution plan or as opposed to the defined benefit plan. I don't know if Ms. Miralles has the calculations in that regard, but she may.
We didn't, presented you with the findings from Hooker and Holcomb on what the reduction would be as people come on to the 401 plan. But I can't crystal ball what people will retire or what people, who will leave the town. And it's so close to the end of the contract that I didn't forecast anybody retiring or leaving the town in the next 9 weeks, which is really what it is. Attorney McHale has given you what the cost increases would be for the employees in both co-pays and co-premiums over an annual basis, but even in the next 9 weeks, if this is approved, it's $10,000, over $10,000 for this group. But I can't tell you in the future how many people will retire. But it's 2% less to do a 401 per employee's salary. So it depends on what the employee's salary is when they come on board.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Ann?
Are you able to give us an idea of an average starting salary prior to this change and an average starting salary with the 9% lower first step?
Well, the lowest rate for any of the positions in the bargaining unit in terms of starting salaries is $55,000.
So 9% lower is about $9,000 lower.
Well, it's about $5,000
$5,000
lower.
lower. $5,000.
So that's about the best estimate I could give for you.
May I ask another question?
Of course.
Two other questions.
Yeah.
Could you describe the positions that are included in this bargaining unit? What type of town positions are in this unit?
Sure, Mary.
Thank you.
The professionals in the library who head the departments, so your reference librarian, the branch manager, people who run the Water Pollution Control Authority, the superintendent, the assistant superintendent, the building inspector, the people who write grants in the town. So they are your technical and professional. Bill Hurley, engineer. Those are the people who this contract would be for.
Thank you. One other question. The medical insurance, will that be a single contribution premium share, whether it's an individual, a couple, or a family, or does it change by the nature of the participant?
The answer to that question is it will be a single contribution based on the blended rate, which is defined as the total cost that the town incurs for its self-insured plan, including the costs associated with administering the plan, the stop-loss coverage that the town buys for insurance, and all the claims divided by the number of plan participants. So you will pay if you're paying 11% of premium costs, you will pay that roughly $2,500 figure regardless of whether you have single coverage or family coverage under the terms of this settlement.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions regarding the contract? Go ahead.
Thank you. Thanks for your hard work. It seems like some progress is being made in areas that we have talked about in the past, so that's great. If we do not approve this contract, as you have urged us to, what happens?
If you reject this contract, this would be the second time, which is your right, but certainly not my recommendation. We will then be in binding arbitration. In my experience, we will have arbitration hearings sometime in July, August, September. We'll get an arbitration award sometime in November, and that will be for a contract that's already expired for a number of months. We will have a difficult road to hoe in arbitration in as much as, and I'm sorry, for many of you this is repetitive, there are 5 statutory criteria that the arbitration panel must consider in deciding whether to award the town's last best offer or the union's last best offer on an issue-by-issue basis. That's the way Connecticut's binding arbitration works. One of the statutory criteria that the arbitration panel considers is the history of negotiations between the parties. And one of the troubling things about inheriting contracts with settlements, which may or may not have been as progressive as some members of the RTM may have liked, for one reason or another, is that we have bad negotiating history in as much as we have shown a willingness to agree to certain terms. And there have been 3 arbitration awards that have been rendered within the last 6 months where a settlement has been reached and then rejected by either the legislative body or the union. And each of those cases have revealed that the arbitration panel has been willing to award the settlement where one side or the other proposes it, under the theory that the negotiating history, which is one of the 5 statutory criteria, demonstrates that the parties who negotiated the contract themselves thought it was a fair settlement. And in each of those cases, the arbitrators had said, listen, they thought it was fair. Who are we to second guess that? It's not uncommon that a constituent group who is not part of the negotiations will second guess things, but because the law requires us to consider the legislative history, we will award the settlement. And so it's my opinion, having studied these cases, that should you reject this settlement for one reason or another, and should the union propose the settlement agreement as their last best offer, we're likely to be in the position that we are tonight, regardless.
Okay, so this contract really is dealt with separately from the next one, and if we reject it, it can't roll into the next contract and be part of the negotiations for that contract.
No, if you reject it, as I said, which is your right, then we will start arbitration, and we will simply get an arbitration award for the period of July 1, 2010 through June 30, 2013. The arbitration panel will have no jurisdiction over an extended period, since the parties made proposals back in 2010, and the time for making proposals or new proposals have long since expired. So we will get an award sometime in the end of 2013 that will give us a contract for the period of 10 through 13, and then we will be probably about 6 months behind after the expiration of that contract, starting negotiations over a contract to follow.
So negotiations for the next contract cannot start until after the arbitration is settled.
That is absolutely correct.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Any other questions regarding the contract? Bruce?
Thank you, Mr. McHale. First question I have 4 questions. One is, Are these people currently covered under Social Security?
Correct, they are.
They are. So that's not an issue moving to a defined contribution plan as opposed to a defined benefit where it's going to cost the town more money,
It's not an extra cost.
as it was the
With the
case with the
police.
police. Okay. Just to be clear, on the 11% participation on the full cost, is it really the full cost? Or is it the premium only that the town pays for the administrative side of it? So it's the total of the claims experience for the group, plus the administrative costs, and any other costs that are associated with this, they will have to pay an 11% participation.
Yes, we actually defined the term very precisely in terms of what the blended rate is, because the history of Fairfield had some inconsistency in terms of how that, what had been referred to in the past in some settlements as the budget book rate, what was inclusive of that rate. And in the settlement itself, if you have the settlement document, under medical and dental insurance premium cost sharing, you'll see that the parties agreed that as soon as practical following ratification of this agreement, and that's what I'm hoping the RTM will do on the 22nd, current employees will pay 11% of the blended rate for the town premium equivalent costs. We self-fund our benefits here, to remind you. We don't pay a premium. We pay the claims, we pay people to administer the claims, we pay for stop-loss coverage, and we pay administrative fees. But we have decided in this community, given the fact that we have many employees and with the Board of Education, that it makes more economical sense to self-fund our benefit as opposed to insure our benefits. The term blended rate, to answer your question precisely, in the agreement is defined as the gross total Town of Fairfield healthcare cost, including expected claims plus administrative fees, stop-loss fees, and network access fees for a given year as determined by the town's health consulting firm. So all those costs are included in the blended rate.
Okay, fine. It would be helpful to me, and I'm sure a lot of other people, to understand if we could get Carolyn or whoever could do this, take a average salary, whether it's 55,000, it would appear it would probably be a little higher, maybe like 75, 70, somewhere in the middle, let's say, of wherever the high and low is, and say, what are the cost, the contribution to the individual under the plan as it stands, as it is going forward, and under a new plan, so that you can really see where you could pretty much do the math and figure out what is this really going to save us if there's 42 people, and the only variable is the claims experience. Is if the claims go from $1 million a year to $2 million a year, it's a big difference. But
Well, I honestly don't think, I mean, I think in speaking with the brokers, the tweaking of the copays on the plan design portion of this is 1 or 2% of premiums.
copay is not the issue.
It's insignificant.
Right.
We're talking about employees contributing to the cost at the rate of $1,506 versus over $2,500. That's the savings. And that's going to be the only savings that you're going to get, because employees are going to be contributing more since they're paying 11% of the blended rate. New hires will be paying 13% of the blended rate until some other medical insurance plan design is proposed, bargained, or arbitrated.
The only purpose of asking for that, this is relatively esoteric stuff for somebody who's not in the insurance business or whatever.
Right.
But if somebody saw us, man X under this plan pays 11% of, here, take last year's numbers, and then forecast it out and just say this is how much more contribution is got to be made. I think this is a very pertinent point to how we can control the costs for the town, is to make the employees pay a larger portion of a health care plan that's already been recognized as a Cadillac plan. I'll leave it at that, but if there's a way to get that information, it'd be helpful. Lastly, you mentioned about the arbitration. Who negotiates for the town? The first selectman? And you? And that's it?
Well, the first selectman determines who the negotiating committee is. The negotiating committee in all the contracts that I've bargained have included Ms. Mirrlees and myself.
Okay.
Mr. Tetro has attended negotiations from time to time, actually attended the negotiation session that resulted in the settlement agreement with the mid-management group when we settled with them on March 18, 2013. But that has been our negotiating committee.
Well, I guess...
Now, we have had-
I guess my point is, are you representing the first selectman, or are you representing the taxpayer?
I represent the town of Fairfield.
Okay.
I don't represent any individual.
Okay. Well, it's important, because the drift is there, so one way or the other, it's important to know.
I don't get your drift
Well,
when you say the drift is there.
I'll leave it at that.
Okay?
Thank you. Anyone else? Amy?
Am I correct that the overall increase, now I realize that some of this is retroactive and it's proportional, but when you renegotiate this contract in June of this year, base pays will have risen by 6.5% already.
You are absolutely correct.
So,
Over what they were in 2010.
right. So we would know, for example, using your starting salary figure, that about, say, that would be a retroactive increase, and it would mean a base pay increase starting at 6.5%.
Absolutely.
Okay. Sounds like a lot to me.
Any other questions? Joe?
Joe Palmer, District 4. This might be a question for Ms. Mirrlees. You had mentioned there was a 2% savings between the defined contribution and defined benefit plan based on the new hire. So can you take us through the math on that a little bit? Are you basically saying that what we would contribute for a brand new employee who makes X dollars a year, what we would contribute towards their pension is 2% higher than what we will be contributing towards their contribute? Because there's always been this the thought that it takes a long time for us to actually achieve savings with a defined contribution plan. Are we not, as it appears, in reality with our math or with our employees, et cetera, is that not the case?
Enclosed in the packet that was sent to you, it's from Hooker and Holcomb. I'm sorry, I took my glasses off. And the switch to the above defined contribution program is estimated at an annual 5.1% of payroll as compared to 7%. And there's an estimated 1% cost for disability insurance, but also the plan has a 7.5 return for the defined benefit plan, which some people find high. So that leaves us with approximately a 2% decrease in cost, unless the defined benefit plan generates 7.5% every year, which is what is in the analysis, what has been set by the Pension Retirement Board right now. But this documentation from Hooker and Holcomb is in your package. That was emailed through Jeff.
Great, thank you. I guess the next question I would ask, and it might be for you as well, are there any other sources of, let's say, income for these employees? I know there's overtime and there's work attendance bonuses. Is there longevity steps included in here that we're not aware of?
Well, there are longevity steps at 10, 15, and 20 years. What happens is an employee comes in, and in the first 4 years, there are step increases. There are then only cost of living increases until 10, 15, and 20 years. Overtime for this group normally only takes place with the operational managers in DPW. So the people, the individuals who do highway and all the snow removal and all of those individuals get overtime. Any other individual, like the budget director or the building inspector, get comp time. They have a 35-hour work week. If they work overtime, if they come to meetings, if they work through a storm, they get comp time, and that's contractual. I'm just standing here.
Sure, yeah. So I moved this, sorry, Jerry. So the numbers that we're seeing in terms of the overall compensation package aren't really the full amount that.
The only individuals who get paid overtime in this group are those managers in the DPW operations branch, which are those people who do the work during snowstorms and FEMA-related events through hurricanes. Other individuals who are bargaining members of this unit only ever get comp time, and they do by contract. And
Sure. But on the sheet that you have actually right there, I don't know how the title off the top of my head here.
it's cost associated with it.
Does that show the whole picture of the compensation, aside from what you just mentioned?
Yes.
That has the longevity steps
Yes,
in
it's all
there?
in salary.
Okay, okay.
It's steps, longevity are all factored into this.
So when we're talking about a salary increase, that runs parallel to their steps?
In this particular union, I would say 95% or even higher of the members have reached all their longevity and steps.
Okay.
They're all long-serving members.
Okay. Thanks, that's all.
Any other members? Tom?
I just have one quick comment. I'm going to support acceptance of this agreement, largely because it has a defined contribution, which is exactly what this body asked for. And I understand, I'm not happy about the increase in compensation, but I understand negotiations being what they are, that you don't get something for nothing. Going forward, since we're pulling out a clean sheet of paper come July 1st, I think we've reached the point where our demand for services has become inelastic, and I think compensation has got to be flat going forward. So, but as this contract is, you gave this body what it asked for, and I'm going to support it.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions? John?
Yeah, I just want to respond to what Tom said. I didn't bring the information with me today because I didn't know we were going to be talking about this tonight, but I was looking online this morning, and I'll bring it at the next meeting. The raises some of our public sector employees are getting over the last few years are right in line with the private sector. They are, and I'll bring the information. So we just need to be careful with respect to what we say. It was I forget what it's called, the Society for Human Resources. They have a whole study on it. It's right in line with it. So we can't say blanket statements that our public sector employees are not entitled to any increase because they're making so much more than the private sector. It's just not true. Now, we have to be careful with respect to what raises we give them and be fair and equitable. But these people work, and they have to be compensated. Thanks.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, Mary, I had a couple of questions for you. my correlation here is when the whole issue happened with the resignation of the CFO, we had the agreement come up with the non-union department heads and the elected officials. It's always been my understanding that department heads and elected officials, their benefits are derived from this contract, mid-management. So when we pass this, would your benefit change? Are you going to now go to the 11%?
Department heads loosely follow this contract, but if you're going to follow department heads and this contract, I would go back and say in 2009, when this contract provided for 3% for the union, department heads got 0. In 2010, they got 1.5, and this contract is getting 1. In 2011, they're getting 2.5, and department heads got 2. In 2012, this contract's providing 3%, and department heads got 2. Their step increases are about 8% the first 4 years. Department heads get cost of living. So there are huge differences, which department heads don't get overtime, don't get comp time. They get different things. You can make a change, but you can't just pick. You have to pick the whole of the fabric, not part of the fabric.
I see your point. What is going to be what is the position of the administration, meaning the first selectman and you, when it comes to this?
I don't speak for the first selectman. I can tell you that there will be a change as of July 1, but I do not speak for the first selectman. Only he speaks for himself.
Okay, I think that the first selectman, if this is coming before us on April 22nd, to my fellow representatives, I have some concerns about this because there is history here where these two groups have been based upon each other.
And clearly, not really.
No, there is significant history.
There's significant history, but in point of fact,
Okay,
there's-
there is history, and what I want to see addressed in this is that we have this agreement that came up when Mr. Hiller left, that was between the first selectman and this de facto bargaining unit, and it's based upon provisions within this contract, and I want to make sure that going forward, we all understand that it's my understanding, or I firmly believe that if it's based on this, the next first selectman would not be eligible for a pension under this. And that's what I want to clarify.
you would have to address those questions to the first selectman.
Okay, I think he should be prepared to answer that, because that's a question I'm going to have on the 22nd. Any other questions from members?
I can tell you that unfortunately, department heads and the first selectman are not members of the bargaining unit, and so the bargaining unit rules do not, we loosely follow this contract, but there's a provision in the charter of the town of Fairfield that says all employees of the town will be in the town's retirement system, so it's how the retirement system is defined.
Okay.
We can talk about this outside.
Oh, no, but I just want the first selectman to be prepared for these questions on the 22nd so he doesn't get blindsided.
We'll tell him.
Are there any other questions from members? Any comments on the contract from the public? Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
I believe that's good for you tonight. Oh, I'm sorry. Did you have something for the contract?
Out of curiosity, in 2009, did this bargain unit actually give back 1% of a negotiated cost of living increase?
In 2009, in 2008, 2009, there were a number of settlement agreements or givebacks that were arranged with a number of various unions. This union, for the period of time of 2009 to 2010, gave back 1.5% of their 3% increase. At the end, June 30th, 2010, they got the entire 3%, and they no longer gave that give back. So for 1 year, they did do that. And you people do test my memory.
That's it. Okay, I think that's it for this issue. Representative McCullough, Chairman of Education Committee, will take over for the presentation on the education budget. Thank you.
Thank you for your time.
Good evening, everyone. Tonight we're going to have a presentation by Dr. David Title, Superintendent of Schools, and the Chairman of the Board of Education. I'm going to direct you to the screen where there will be a PowerPoint presentation. I want to just take the opportunity to thank Dr. Title and members of the Board of Education and members of the central office staff for being here this evening to answer any of our questions.
Okay. You'll click and okay, not yet, but I'll drive. Thank you to the members of the RTM for holding this meeting and listening to the presentation from the Board of Ed. We're here to make a presentation, but also to answer any questions that you have. Dr. Title, as the creator of the budget and the keeper of the math and our CEO of the school district, will respond to virtually all of your questions. But if you have a question specifically that you'd like me to address first, let me know that. If not, Dr. Title will lead off and I'll follow as may be necessary. First, I want to make a comment that some of you heard if you were at the Board of Finance meeting. Dr. Title, as our superintendent, when he was hired, we fully understood that not we, because I was not on the board at the time, but the board fully understood and set as part of his expectations that he would look at the operational audit, look for efficiencies, and that if he was proposing new ideas, he would come forth with cost-saving measures to kind of balance it out. He's kept faith with that commitment that he made to the board. This year, when you looked at the budget and you saw that we brought forward a budget that was 0.83% increase, and then when it got to the Board of Selectmen after the Board of Ed met, it was a 0.63% increase. When you take away the town-controlled pension in terms of the contribution amount and the health insurance, because we're self-insured, that is really pushed by experience, our own experience. And so he created a very tight budget because he recognized last summer that the health insurance was going to be through the roof. And so his staff, not just himself, his staff, his central office staff, his principals, put their heads together and brought forward a very efficient budget. And I would like you to, at some point, at least acknowledge that he did a very good job in bringing forward a tight budget. I think if Mr. Tetro was here, he would be the first to acknowledge that last summer it was Dr. Title who said we really ought to look at bidding the health insurance. And just in the administrative fees alone, with Anthem tightening their, sharpening their pencil, it looks as though the Board of Ed is going to save a little over $800,000 because of that decision. And the town's going to save about $400,000 in that decision. In the vernacular, he earned his pay this year. Saved the town $1,250,000. And so I just want you to know that sitting to my right is a budget hawk. He cares deeply about the quality of education for our students, but he also tries to manage the budget in a responsible manner. Let me move on, if you will. I just have 2 or 3 key points that I want to make, and then I'll turn it over to Dr. Title. You can read that statement. I just want to key off of 2 words that are up there. Any of you who have attempted to get a child into college know that colleges measure the quality of a school district based on whether it offers a comprehensive and rigorous program. You can't nibble away at the edges and bring the school district down to reading and writing and arithmetic and expect colleges to value graduates from Fairfield Public Schools. And so it's important to fund the schools so that we maintain a comprehensive and rigorous program. Those are very measurable terms when it comes to trying to get kids into places of higher education. You can also read that, and I would only say this: I am a strong believer that what the past generation created, which is a quality school system, the current generation has a responsibility to pass forward to the next generation. And so we have a responsibility, I believe, to fund the school district so that it remains equal or better than the peers that we measure ourselves against. This is something that you all know, so I'm just going to kind of quickly say it. School districts are labor-intensive, but because of the buildings, we're also capital-intensive. We can't say we're one, but we don't worry about the other. We have to worry about both, and we have to continually invest in both in order to maintain quality. The balance of this presentation is essentially going to be an overview of the Fairfield Public Schools program, some highlights of student achievement, some budget history and cost containment measures, and then our 13-14 budget priorities and overview. For those of you who sat through the Board of Finance presentation, you'll see and recognize many of the same slides, but for those of you who did, I think Ann Stamor is one. I will give you a test because there are 2 or 3 new slides in here in response to some recent information, so I'll find out if you can pick out which ones those are. Here's Dr. Title.
I need to stand. Can I take this with me? Good to see you all. Thank you. So I'm really proud of what we have in the school system, finishing my 3rd year here. Before we get into the cost, sometimes in budget season we're often focused on the cost of things. I'd like to turn your attention to the benefits or value that we're getting for that investment. So as Phil said, we have a comprehensive K-12 core program. We also have some very high level and rigorous electives that definitely look good for students as they go through the college process. You're also, this budget funds a significant number of advanced placement courses, which is another measure of the worth of a school system. In fact, some of those rankings that you see, U.S. News and World Report and some of these other ones, often this is the metric. They look at how many AP courses you offer, they measure how well your kids do, what percentage get 3 and above, and then that's how you get some of these national rankings. You all know we have other program areas. We're proud of these as well. You know about the special education program, which spans ages 3 to 21. We have these other programs in grades K to 12 down the middle, and in all the grades K to 12, we also have another variety of program areas. The big one.
No, you're making Jerry nervous walking around with this.
Oh, okay. Is this all right? Yeah, okay, moving on. I know we got a basketball game to get to. I'm moving. All right. The pressure's not as much on you. Tomorrow night there's a Board of Ed meeting and the UConn women are playing, so they're really under the gun. So I have just some indicators of quality here, not all, and it's not all about test scores, but that's the currency of the realm. Just in the most recent testing, in 10 of the 24 test grade combinations in 2012, we hit 6-year highs in all of these areas up here. We have been making steady progress year over year in terms of our standardized test scores. Of course, we always want them to be higher, but in terms of looking at our own progress over time, we're definitely heading in the right direction. If you compare us to the state average, last year you saw a bunch of graphs that compared us to the state averages. I pretty much summarized it here. In a couple areas that weren't on the previous slide, we had some notable achievements. For example, in 7th grade reading, where over 90% of our kids for the 3rd consecutive year are at the state goal, which is a rigorous goal. There are other indicators of quality besides test scores. I can't really go through all of them here, but we have had some national and state recognitions. that are listed there. I told you about the importance of students being enrolled in AP courses and how well they do, and that's what the third and fourth points are there. That in fact, we are having more and more kids take AP courses, and the scores are steady there, so or declining. So we're really proud of what we've accomplished in that arena for our high flyers. And in terms of kids going to college, we've got a very lengthy list of well-regarded and competitive colleges that our kids go to. A few others. This is just a very brief sample in music and art and physical education, sports. I think we're going to bring a couple of our athletic teams to you in April. We just had the hockey team win the state championship. And when I put these slides up, I get immediate emails from all of these departments saying, how could you only put that up? We have 50 more things you could put up there. So obviously, if you've been in this town for a long time, we're very proud of our accomplishments, not just in the so-called core academics, but in the other indicators of quality that are very important and keep us competitive with other Fairfield County districts. Participation is as important as accomplishment, and we have large numbers of our students involved in these activities. High school athletics, you can see the numbers are way up there. We have about 3,000 high school students, so you can figure out the percentage there if you're good at your math. And you can see that we have a lot of kids involved in a lot of different activities. I'll do a little budget history because some of this has been floating about, and we did quite a bit of research to look at what we've done. So I'm going to show you some charts in a second, but I want to give you this is the answer. Then I'm going to show you the data. So the highlight is, so if I put the graphs up and you start glazing over, remember this slide. All right. The state measures per pupil expenditures on a consistent basis so it can compare expenditures from town to town. 10 years ago, Fairfield's per pupil expenditure was 23rd in the state. Last year it was 61st. In the last 10 years, we've had rising enrollment. The teaching staff has by and large grown to match that, but our other staff has either stayed about the same or been flat or declining. So, all right, this is a math test. I have a little, look at this, Nancy. We are on fire with the technology. All right, so this is 10 years of Fairfield's per pupil expenditures against the state. Now there is a red line here that shows changes in the consumer price index over that time, but school costs don't always match up with CPI. There's a lot of other factors involved. CPI is set to measure one basket of goods. We don't necessarily buy that basket of goods. But you can get an idea of what sort of school inflation has been over the years by looking at what the state average has done, and that's the gray bars. So here's the gray bars show the state average, and you can see across the whole state what the increase has been. The blue bar is Fairfield. And you can see for the first 5 years of this, the increases and how much higher it was than the state. And what's happened over the last 5 years is how the gap has narrowed. And the little numbers at the bottom are the Fairfield's rank in per pupil expenditures from 23rd to 61st. 11-12 is the last year that we have data on from the state. We also put in here, because it always comes up, this time frame in here is when the school district is opening schools, which partially accounts for this increase. So for example, back here, Ludlow Middle School opened, and then here's the first year of Fairfield Ludlow High School, and so forth, Burr, and so forth. Oh, I'm sorry. Backing up. All right, so basically the story here is the gap is narrowing between Fairfield and the state to the point where we're not that far off the state average, and we're in Fairfield County. This is student enrollment and staff FTEs. So here, the enrollment is in the purple, and you have to look at the right axis. And you can see the growth in the enrollment from the last 10 years. Now this includes next year's projected, so this is a slightly different 10-year period than the previous one. We took the most recent 10 years that we have. The blue is the growth in the teaching staff and certified support staff, classroom teachers, psychologists, social workers, speech language pathologists, and so forth. So anyone who's not an administrator but holds a teaching certificate. And you can see that basically, over time, the blue has been rising to keep up with the enrollment, by and large. I have a chart version of this that you'll see in a second. The non-certified staff, secretaries, paraprofessionals, custodians, maintenance, and so forth, has actually stayed pretty steady, made a brief blip up, and has been on a downward slide. So in fact, we have many fewer people in these non-certified positions than we did 10 years ago, and the enrollment is up. And the administrators have basically down here, and this chart also gives you an idea of the ratio of administrators to the people they supervise, administrators have basically been flat. Summarizing this down at the bottom, the student enrollment has gone up by 19.1% over the last 10 years. Our teaching and certified support staff has gone up about 11%, and that's the highest one. Administrative staff has gone up less than 3%. Basically, it's been 1.2 FTEs over the last 10 years, while enrollment's been going up 19%. And the non-certified staff FTEs has declined by 38 positions, or 9.2%. Overall, staff FTEs in the district has gone up only 4.6%, while the enrollment has gone up 19.1%. This is an updated, actually it's one of the new slides. This is updated.
Give the answer
I
before
know,
I give it to
I know. Well, for people that were saying, I saw all this before at the Board of Finance, why should I pay attention? Okay, here you go. So this gives you an idea of the budget increases in the last 5 years for the school system, including where we are currently. As passed by the Board of Finance, the Board of Ed increase year over year will be 1.85%. The 5-year average increase is now down to 1.73%. This is basically the beginning of the recession, and this is where we've been. And in fact, you look at 2.9 and go, whoa, that was a good year. That was actually a horrible year. That was my first year here where we cut $2.8 million and laid off 40 people. So, anyway, how have we managed to do this? I'm not going to read all these. They're in their handouts. But just in the last 3 years, and there's been stuff that was happening before I got here. It wasn't like Dave Tuttle showed up and all of a sudden we started containing costs. Nothing could be further from the truth. I can only talk about what's happened since I've been here. There are historians that fill me in on the rest of it. But we have been actively saving wherever we can over the past 3 years, which is one of the reasons why our per pupil expenditure has not been moving much at all, and why our increases have been relatively modest. And one of the things people might remember in the very first year when I brought my own first budget forward was we took the highly unpopular step, at least with high school students, of moving the start times to 7:30. That saved about $500,000. So there's some here. I've got 3 pages of this. Here's some personnel reductions that have been taken in the last 3 years, particularly hard hit in the non-certified side. So there have been personnel and non-personnel reductions over the past 3 years. And at some point, you just get to the point where you just start eating into the core program here. All right, so budget priorities. As we went into this budget, trying to preserve our excellent instructional program as cost effectively as possible. There are some major state education reform initiatives on the horizon that we are going to have to deal with. They are going to cost us money, and they are not funded. We knew we were going to have a rough year, particularly in health insurance, but also in pension, so we went into this, as Phil suggested, trying to limit our increases in the line items other than those two. We knew we were in trouble, and so we really turned away a lot of requests. And we have enrollment shifts going on where high school enrollment continues to rise, and enrollment at the elementary level is flat, but there's movement around at the middle school level, and we had to move some staff around. But by and large, there's not much change in the staffing. State education reform, since some of you are in the education committee and might actually be interested in what's going on educationally, is there are 3 major reform efforts going underway simultaneously in the state courtesy of a lot of factors, and these are added to the list of mandates that we have. We actually have a link on our website to all the state mandates, and you can get on that, and you can actually click through to the statutory language on it. It blows you away. But these are the newest ones. Our new teacher and administrator evaluation system are going to be incredibly labor intensive. It looks like we're going to be able to phase that in, but in year one, which is this coming year, we are not adding any staff or anybody to help with this. We're going to muck it through, but a preview of coming attractions, we will not be able to sustain that into 14-15 unless there's a legislative change on it. The new Common Core state standards for learning right now in English language arts and mathematics means we have to revise a tremendous amount of our curriculum. We have to revise our assessments to comport with the new, with the new assessments that are going to be coming out. And these all do intersect, and again, there's no help coming from the state to make this happen. The impact of these, depending on the teacher evaluation, administrator evaluation is going to add anywhere from 10 to 40 added days of work depending on the position, and that comes from an independent source, not from me on the back of an envelope. We are going to need to develop all new assessments in content areas that will align with the teacher evaluation and the standards. It's all linked together. We can't have the state giving one kind of set of assessments and then have us give a different kind of assessment in the classroom. It will set up our kids up to fail. It's a huge project. We need to develop new curriculum and instructional techniques, which is going to involve teachers and everybody else, and a lot of professional development will be required to make that happen. We're going to have some additional software and maintain that software to comply with the state requirements. All the new tests are going to be given on technology. They're going to be technology-based tests, and to the extent our technology hardware is not compatible with the state requirements, we're going to need to continually upgrade that, so we need to continue to invest in our technology infrastructure to comply. And this is just on top of normal operations, other district improvement initiatives, and our increasing student enrollment. And we have not added any administrators to this budget to accommodate any of this. All right, so here's where we started in 13-14 with our budget. This is the budget that came out of the Board of Ed, 4.63, actually started with me at 4.83. Of that 4.63, this is ancient history now, feels like 100 years ago. Of that 4.63, you can see that 3.65% of it was health insurance, 0.35 was pension. All the rest of that budget increase, as it came out of the chute over to the town, was 0.63. And if you take salaries out of the equation, it was 0.1%. All other accounts in the budget were basically held flat. That's where we started. Now, to recap where we started. This actually includes my recommended budget, which was 4.86. Then the Board of Ed reduced it by 342, 417, which brought it down to 4.63. Then the first selectman proposed a budget. Our health insurance experience had started to turn, so this had nothing to do with bidding. He reduced it by $1.1 million before it went to the selectmen. That brought it down to 3.89. Some of you might remember that stage. The selectmen took it and reduced it further by $1,787,488, and this was a combination of another improvement in health insurance experience and also some new figures on pension to a smaller extent. And it also included about $343,000 in savings due to the bidding that sort of stage one was done at that point. And those were the administrative and stop-loss savings that we got from the bidding. This is where the town was able to reduce their budget by $400 and this 343 on the board side. And that would be independent of whether anybody changed carriers. That was from the bidding. So when it came out of the Board of Selectmen, we were at 2.69. Then the Board of Finance got a hold of it, and they cut 1.25 million. which brought us to the 1.85 where we are right now. Now, this was not based on knowledge of any particular savings. I will point out that the number I've been working with in terms of a change of carrier, right now I'm estimating, Aon is still working on this, that a change of carrier in medical from Anthem to Cigna will save us about $500,000. So it's possible that we can absorb 500 of that, still leaves us $750,000 to take out of the rest of the budget. And as you know, there's not much left. So that's where we stand right now. I guess my brief aside message is they've taken a lot out of our hide already. So here's where we stand right now as a percentage of the total budget. And this does not include saving money by changing carriers. This slide was done before we really thought we could do that. But basically, the health insurance and pension costs alone come to 2.05%. The budget increase is 1.85. So that meant all other accounts had to be reduced, and that includes salaries and everything else in there. Now, we think we can get that back up slightly into the, up from where that is, but it gives you an idea that basically we're barely able to fund our health insurance and pension costs with the increase as it is, because we do have other expenses. Our projected enrollment, as you can see, there's a shift going on there. The middle school is starting to go down a bit. The high school is still going up. It will be going up for the next 3 years. And so our projected enrollment continues to go up. This is under the staffing. I should just say this slide may be antiquated because this was in the originally proposed budget. With the enrollment going up, the staffing was going up mostly in the non-certified areas by a very small fraction. We have about 1,500 employees, so we're talking about 0.05% there, although that is not likely to stay with the reductions we have to make, so that's old news. And I think I'm done.
Yep,
I'm going to give
okay.
it back to Phil. That's
So,
as fast as I can talk. And we'll have Phil
So
do
to
the
kind of
wrap-up.
summarize what we think the last 25 slides have shown you is that historical support from this town of the school system's budget has enabled us to deliver a high-quality program, and that preserving that program requires a certain level of investment, that we have become more efficient over the last several years, and that right now the 1.85% proposed increase is less than the 2.05% that we think health and pension will go up, and it's less than the rate of inflation overall. And so further reductions will diminish the quality of the school system, which is not something that I think any of us want to do. And to reiterate, and I'll say it my own way, and not necessarily the line on this slide, I paid taxes for a certain number of years. My 2 kids went to this school system for a certain number of years. They're no longer in the school system. But the value they received did not match the taxes I paid. And the system, if you will, the commitment that we make to one another is that we'll educate kids over a 12-year period, we'll pay for it over a longer period, and so our kids will benefit, but that the community benefits as well from a strong public school system. The whole community benefits, and this is a statement that started 150 years ago, 200 years ago when this country was founded, and said, we depend on a strong educational system so that we have an educated public. So the whole community benefits from a strong public school system. So we're ready to take your questions. And give me the microphone and we'll put it back in.
Careful on that cord there.
Jerry, do you trust me to... I'll be right there.
Questions from members of the body. Jay. You want to come here? You want to stay right there? Jerry, would you like them to stay right where they are? Why don't you come over here?
Yeah, you can stand there and I'll stay here.
This on?
Can we hear me? Yes. How are you, Dr. Title?
Great, thanks.
Thank you very much for everything that you do for the town, first and foremost. I just have a quick question. Let me get this on. I want to ask specific about teacher evaluation system that's being mandated by the state, and what impact is the current members of the administration is going to feel from this evaluation that's being mandated from our state.
Well, the supervisory ratio for most of our principals to teachers is in the vicinity of 35 to 1. And people that we've been working with around the state, including our local regional service center, Cooperative Education Services, estimated that in round numbers, the additional workload per teacher that's being evaluated or per administrator being evaluated is approximately 1 additional work day per individual. So if you're a middle school principal and you're evaluating 35 people, they're estimating it's approximately another 35 days of work under the current structure, above and beyond the current structure. It's an incredibly labor-intensive process. It involves multiple meetings to set goals, often multiple goals for each teacher. It involves numerous conferences. It involves observations of practice, above and beyond anything that we're currently doing. I'll have to say that it's all good stuff. I mean, I think it will improve the quality of feedback we give to teachers and ultimately change their practice. The problem is the labor involved to pull this off. Fortunately, the state is allowing us for next year to phase this in. So we will not feel the full brunt of it this coming year. We'll probably feel half a brunt of it. And then in 14-15, the expectation is everybody will have to implement the full system.
Thank you.
Just to make in sum total, we have about 1,000 certified staff. So 7-hour day, that's 7,000 hours of extra work this year that will be spread among our roughly 35 administrators who are qualified and certified to conduct these evaluations. It adds up.
Representative Palmer, then Representative Marmion.
Joe Palmer, District 4. Dr. Title, so I was hoping maybe we can step back a little bit and maybe you can explain how all this came about. And it's called Common Core that basically we're talking about here. And maybe you can just give us a little bit of a history to frame, where it came from, and then we can talk a little bit about.
You want a brief history of the Common Core? Okay, here we go. And well, they're linked. Teacher evaluation is linked. There was a massive education reform package passed in the legislature last year, and at the same time, the state submitted an application to the federal government to get a waiver for the burdens under the No Child Left Behind Act, an act that many educators have been cursing under their breath now since it was enacted. And as the true atrociousness of that law became more and more apparent, and Congress's inability to reauthorize the legislation, the Department of Education, Federal Department of Education, said to states basically, okay, Congress can't get their act together, so we're going to offer you an incentive. If you want to get out from under the thumb of No Child Left Behind, you need to do these things to get a waiver. And one of the things in it was to ratchet up and change the teacher evaluation model. Another thing was to adopt these new Common Core state standards and participate in all of these new assessments that are coming down the line. And there were a number of other activities that were part of this legislation. It was very comprehensive. It was touted as the great year of education reform. It was pretty bipartisan in the state legislature, but I really feel it was driven by the federal government in some ways. There were some states that decided not to take that and are not participating, but the Common Core has been accepted by 45 of the 50 states. And so for the first time, we're really going to have essentially a national curriculum that will, in fact, ratchet up the standards for students and make us more globally competitive as a country. But there's a huge cost to it, and a lot of training and a lot of resources have to go into it. So that's kind of where it all came from. And there's very little backing off of it that the state can really do, because the state told the federal government, this is what we're committing to, this is in our waiver, and therefore we have this along with several other pieces. So that's as brief as I can be with it.
But that basically, at the end of the day, helps us maintain the same level of funding from the state, or the federal government funds the state.
There's federal funding that flows to us. It's in your budget under revenue. It's basically the big Title I money that we get. And in order for us to continue to get that money, in order for the state to get the money to pass on to us, then everybody has to play by these rules. But in fact, the state went one step further and basically said, even if your school district doesn't get a dime from the federal government, you still have to follow all these rules. So, you know, you might have a school system that gets no Title I money at all. They exist out there, not too far from us. They're dealing with the same thing. So there have been some funds provided to the state to help with this, but they've largely gone to pilot districts who are trying this out, and most of the money at the state level for education reform has gone to the 30 lowest performing districts that are called alliance districts. Most of those serve an urban or disadvantaged population. So I can't say no money has flowed from the state to local districts. It just doesn't flow to Fairfield.
Okay, thanks. And so you mentioned several things like there might be some new technology, and and then you mentioned 2014. So we're not, obviously not this year, but the year after, we might, or maybe next year's budget at this time of year, you might be coming to us with some brand new kind of expenditures. Do you have any sense of what this might cost us?
Well, I think that we've tried to maintain our technology infrastructure commitment for a number of years here through the face of some of these budget cuts. It's been an area that I've been reluctant to touch. I think looking at the numbers you saw up there, that will be impossible, I think, going forward. In my recommendation, I think we're going to have to scale that back. I think we're in pretty good shape along those lines, but there's hardware and software costs that will be in there. I think the bigger question is, and we don't have an answer to this, and I don't know what the impact will be, is how do we staff up for this teacher evaluation and new administrator evaluation system? Because not just the teachers that have to go through this, all of us that evaluate other administrators, principals or assistant principals, some of us in central office, we evaluate those folks. That game has all changed, and we just don't have a handle on it right now. I mean, look, I want to minimize costs wherever I can, but I also can't set people up to fail. I just can't put a number on that right now. I just sort of signaling that we're going with basically no change this year for a lot of reasons. I'm thinking down the road that may have to change next year, but I'm really hesitant to give you a figure. And
Sure.
there's other moving parts in the budget that could offset that as well. But it's a preview of coming attractions. I just don't know how big an attraction it'll be.
So you'll be talking about this at Board of Ed meetings throughout the year, and kind of
The Board of Ed had a presentation a month ago about the state requirements, heard from the CES person who's working across the district and across the state on this. We have a draft of our plan that we're about to submit to the state that the Board of Ed has already received, and will be publicly discussed tomorrow night. But there's very little wiggle room. I mean, this is as prescriptive a set of rules as I've ever seen come from the state. It's really getting to the point where the state and the federal government are being much more prescriptive about what we can and can't do. There's always been rules about teacher evaluation, and there's always been rules about curriculum, but it's often been left with much more discretion at the local level. What we're seeing is an attempt to standardize things more across the state, less discretion at the local level, and more narrowly defined boundaries into which we have to play the game.
Okay, thank you. And just one more question now.
Sure.
In terms of the experiential data that we've had in the health insurance, your budget's decreased, we've come a long way.
Yes.
We have another update coming in the next few weeks from Aon.
Yes.
Do you anticipate any news there that might bring forward another adjustment, let's say, or maybe make another adjustment?
Possible.
Possible.
I haven't seen any data yet. Typically, that's available middle of the month. And until Aon, our consultant, can get that and then get it back to us, and then Doreen can work her magic with the profit and loss statement, we can't really say for sure. So I think by the time this group meets again on the 22nd, I think by then we should have a pretty good handle on it. But I can't hazard a guess. I haven't seen the numbers. But we will have one more month of experience. Now, that might work in our favor or not. I mean, it doesn't always work your way. Now, the trend has been really good. And so what you're starting to see with our budget is when you start peeling away the health insurance costs, this number starts to shrink to where it really is. When you started looking at 4.63 and people were like out of their minds, it's like, but wait a minute, look at this health insurance number. Now people can really see if we can continue to bring that down, it really will help us. But I can't predict, Joe. I have enough trouble predicting the stuff once it comes in.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
It just seemed that in the last few months there have been some type of indication in the back of everyone's mind that this was trending better.
Yes.
That there were kind of some figures thrown out as what it might look like, and I was just curious to see that's kind of tailed off, let's say, and
yeah, I mean it was trending in the right direction, but as we saw last year, it turned around too.
Right.
And so more news, I would say, within the next 2 weeks. Certainly by the time you meet again.
Okay.
Yeah.
Fair enough. Thank
Certainly
you.
well before you have to decide. Yeah.
Jerry has reminded me that if I make a comment, I'm off camera and a voice is coming out of stage right, so I'm going to move over there.
Hi, Sheila Marmion, District 6. Dr. Title, during your presentation, when you were discussing the full-time employees, and you said this was from your original slide set, and that this number of approximately 1,500 employees is likely to change, and I'm assuming you were basing that on the recent Board of Finance 1.25 million reduction. I'm wondering if you could comment further on your thinking on that, on the board's thinking on how that staff might change, and also provide us with your thinking in terms of other areas that you're going to take that 1.25 million from in terms of staff and services.
Right. I can't speak for the board. That's why we have Phil here. And I'm not sure he can speak for the board on this because the board hasn't, discussed it. So with all those caveats, as you could see from this, there's like no wiggle room here in this budget left. And since 80% of our budget is salary and benefits, that's the largest target. Where exactly that will happen is still a matter of discussion. Right now, we'd be looking at, if we can get the $500,000 from the carrier change, we've got a $750,000, hole. And I would say at this point that some of that, maybe not all of it, some of it is going to have to come out of FTE count because there's very little place to go. If we take too much out, and this has been a flaw and I think been a criticism in previous years, if you take it all out of something, like maintenance, then all you're doing is setting yourself up, first of all, the following year your base is way too low, and you're setting yourself up for a big maintenance project down the road that's going to cost you even more. So while you might want to take something there, you really want to be tempted not to take it all out of maintenance or technology because it's just going to come back to bite you. That's just postponing costs. That's not cutting costs. Beyond what's on there, I really feel if this body takes another bite out of this budget, that really what you might as well do is go increase your unemployment account. Okay? Because what happens is we cut positions, and if we have to lay people off, all of the unemployment goes over to the town side. It doesn't happen to the board side. It happened 2 years ago. We know what happens. It's just how we do it here. So in fact, I think a large cut from this body, any kind of significant cut from this body, might end up being a phantom cut, because unemployment you may be paying for 2 years. So we end up, laying off a $30,000 a year employee. You pay that person $30,000 for the next 2 years on unemployment. We get to reduce our budget by $30,000. You get to figure out where to pay the unemployment. That's where we're getting to. And I'm not threatening anything, but I was here 2 years ago when it happened. And so people always say, oh, the Board of Ed, they'll never cut positions. They always threaten that, then it never happens. Go back and look at what happened 2 years ago and see what happened. And watch what happened to the town's unemployment account that went from $200,000 a year to $500,000 a year. That's what happened. I'm not looking forward to that. So I would urge you to leave us alone.
Can I just ask a
Can I be any more blunt?
That was pretty good. Thanks.
I'm getting tired of dancing around this and being nice. Leave us alone.
In terms of who you would leave alone with the staff, can you comment, because what I mainly hear, from constituents who are very concerned about this budget, I also hear from people that they're concerned about which staff, central office versus teachers, et cetera, would be cut in terms of the people, the engines that make the schools run, in terms of the front line answering the phone, the people who are the secretarial staff, the non-teaching staff. Do you have any thoughts in terms of where, if you had to cut, those cuts would come from?
And we've got a lot of ideas bouncing around. We're just sort of starting this process. And we won't have a list till the Board of Ed meets after your final decision on this. We certainly look at everything. But it's a lot of the support personnel are just that. They're the support personnel, and whether they're in the central office or whether they're in schools, they're the support personnel behind the people delivering the direct instruction. These are the people who are the stage managers for the actors who are on the stage. And there have been reductions, as I showed you on that slide. There have been some 40 positions eliminated over the last 10 years in these so-called support positions. We're certainly, after looking at the teacher evaluation and so forth, in no position to touch administrators. Our supervisory ratio with administrators to employees is 40-to-1, in that range. It's really difficult to get a lot out of those areas. So we look at everything. I will say that, the Board of Ed had a brainstorming session at the very beginning, and a lot of ideas were floated. Some of those ideas may resurface, some of them may not. I saw emails where people said, please don't cut X. X was never on the table, but people don't know. There could be other things. I mean, we're always looking for efficiencies. Some of them were not known at the time we did the budget. But look, we'll try to make the impact as minimal as possible. But when you're looking at these fixed costs where they are, you run out of places to go. It's what happened 2 years ago. So we're not bluffing.
Many of you know that a lot of the information that was asked at the Board of Ed meeting or Board of Selectmen, Board of Finance is posted on our website. On that website is a list of the potential areas that we looked at in January. The RTM should be aware that that was not a list that a majority of the Board of Ed or Dr. Title wanted to look at. That list was created because individual members of the Board of Ed, like yourselves, say, well, what does so-and-so cost us? And if we did such and such, what would we save? And so the list was put together. And as Dr. Title said, and as Jeff Steele would say, and Mr. Flynn would say, I can't speak for what the majority of the board will do at the time that they have to do it, but there will be a variety of ideas that come from that list, as well as new ideas as new thoughts are made.
Thank you.
Further questions from the body? We just had some. David, why don't you get up next? Behind Jay.
Jay Lip, District 1. Dr. Tuttle, thanks so much for setting up. You can see there's been a lot of work in reducing the budget. Question on the new teacher evaluation. You're saying it was about 7 hours per teacher with the new system. I know it's very involved. I've read the legislation. It's incredibly involved. How much time does each administrator, with their 40-some-odd people that they evaluate, how much time do they spend on a school year? Is it an hour? Is it 6 hours? And so if we're saying 10 hours, how much more is this going to be an increase?
Yeah, the current system really distinguishes between teachers that are non-tenured and teachers that are tenured. So with tenured teachers right now, you may be only looking at an hour or two a year. With non-tenured teachers, it's more than that. That could be currently 5 or 6 hours a year, and so it depends on the mix you have in your building. The other thing is if you've got a teacher who's on some sort of structured support plan because their performance hadn't been up to par, if they're tenured, that could be quite a bit of extra work. The biggest change, really, if you think about it, is we're basically being asked to treat just about all teachers all year at a higher level than even the non-tenured teachers are. And no one can really argue with the intent. I love to have my principals spending more time trying to improve instruction and evaluate teachers in the classroom. I think there's a lot of good that come from that, but the time element is a serious concern.
I understand that. Along those lines, we have at all the elementary schools, we have instructional support personnel. In accordance with the legislator, the school board can use department heads and personnel like that to contribute to do the teacher evaluation. Is that something that you're going to do in order to, because that's their job, is to supervise instruction and make sure it's better? Are they going to be able to provide direct feedback and share that 3 to 6 evaluations per year, formal and informal, as required?
There are, right now the legislation requires that in order to do the evaluation, you need to hold the administrator certification, the so-called 092 certificate. We do have curriculum leaders who hold that, who part of their work is improving instruction, and they do some evaluation. And I think that's going to be part of the mix going forward, is going to be looking at those jobs that those individuals are doing, and can they take a bigger share of teacher evaluation, and perhaps some of their managerial duties could be done by people that don't hold administrative certification. That's something we need to look at. There is a provision in the law that allows non-administrators to participate. They're called complementary evaluators. Our committee has looked at that. That is very fuzzy right now. And that's not cost-free either.
No, I realize that, but there are personnel in all the elementary schools who their job is to improve instruction, which is what the evaluation system is based upon.
Yes, and right now that's not clear exactly how we can do that. So you could, for example, say technically take a teacher and take them out of the classroom and put them on, say, on a special assignment, and they become part of the evaluation mix. And your cost then is what that teacher costs you to replace in the classroom.
Okay, I'm sorry. I thought we already had teachers that were doing that were math specialists and things. Along
Most of their work's direct services to kids, small groups of kids, providing intervention and support. So there's some of their job that is working with teachers on their instructional strategy, so they can be part of the support network. But a big portion of their job is actually direct services to students, small groups of students, individual students. So we can look at that for 14-15 as a possible area, but right now it looks like the safest course and the one that teachers are most comfortable with is having a certified administrator do it. There is a tension of people within the bargaining unit evaluating each other, making sure there's proper training and support for that. So this is a bit of a moving target. And so I'll have a clearer handle on it by the time I do the budget next year as to what extent we can make some of that happen.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
David McKenzie, District 3. First of all, based on all the emails I get and everybody else here gets, everybody involved directly with the education wants to make sure it doesn't get cut. I don't think a lot of them recognize it's a cut to the growth as opposed to cutting into the budget that was there before. I think everybody here believes in education, and that's the reason it's supported so heavily. My point on this is simply that because education is 55% of the budget, and it's serving 30% of the households, that it's a logical place to look for savings, or to say it differently, to minimize the growth. So my question is pretty straightforward. Do you think the town has a spending problem?
Well, I'm not an expert on the town spending. I can talk about the education spending.
Okay.
Because, you know, what the town spends on other areas is way out of my purview. I'm really not one to comment on whether the town is appropriately spending in any other area besides education. I think if you look at the 5-year % increase in the Board of Ed budget slide that I put up there, shows it's been pretty flat. If you want to use the rate of inflation as a barometer there in the face of growing enrollment, looks like over the last 5 years there hasn't been a spending problem. Those numbers have been averaging under 2%. So we have done what we can do within our control to contain costs. And I think that the premise, and Mr. Dwyer alluded to it, that the spending in education or the investment in education is only benefiting the community for the 30% of the households that have kids in the school system, is to miss the point of public education. So I think that there are, in the economics world, there's we call private benefits and public benefits. The private benefits are those to accrue to the individuals that directly get the benefit from it, like the students. The public benefit is that the entire community benefits from a strong public school system in a variety of ways. If people believe there is no public benefit to a public school system at all, then our founding fathers would have set up a pay-as-you-go system, and everybody's, you know, off to the races on their own. So I think the premise of it, while it's accurate factually, I don't think it captures the true value of the school system to the town as a whole. But I really don't want to venture out to talk about spending in police, fire, rec. I mean, I live here, I take advantage of those services. You know, we love the library, and we love the fact that if we have a fire, the fire department will come and so forth. But, you know, at the same token, you know, we all pay for fire service, but if I don't have a fire, then, you know, did I receive no benefit from that? I don't think so. So I don't want to comment on whether the town has a spending problem. I really want to stay on the education side, or I'll go all philosophical economics on you.
But don't misunderstand my remarks. I'm not saying that there isn't a benefit to the town as a whole.
Okay.
Because everybody's paying 55% of the taxes they pay towards the education on the basis that they do think there is a value to it.
Right.
What I am saying is that when you have 55% of the budget, it's the logical place to look for efficiencies.
I understand that, and as I think we pointed out, you know, we're always looking for efficiencies. If I can save money on some non-educational element, I'm all over that. All right? If I can save money on buses, I'd rather save the money there and spend it on teachers. Sign me up for that one. I will say that, and you know, I have the data right at me, but suburban districts, of which we are one, typically see 55% or more of the town's overall budget goes to education. Typically what that ratio changes when you get into the more urban areas. Typically in urban areas it's more of 50-50. The more suburban areas tends to be a little higher to education. That's sort of the nature of the enterprise. But if what you're saying is essentially the town can't afford it anymore, we have to cut back, obviously that's what we'll do. That's our job.
Okay. Just one quick question. One taxpayer took a look at the curriculum at Fairfield, and it was richer than a couple of the prep schools, private schools in Connecticut. implying that there were some things that we could cut back on. Have you looked at that at all?
I'm not sure what the specifics are on that.
Okay, well,
you know.
all right. I'll bring it up
Yeah,
separately.
I mean, be happy to take a look at that. I think that, you know, there are people that do elect to send their kids to private schools because they think it offers a superior education to what we offer here, so.
I'm just talking about the breadth of the curriculum.
Yeah, well.
But I'll get some information.
Yeah, I'd be interested. I mean, you know, if you're a private school servicing 400 or 500 kids versus a school system, say a high school servicing, in our case, 3,000 kids, you know, you might have a broader base of offerings because you've got more students. And you know, particularly at, say, at levels like the high school or some other places, you've got a certain number of kids that are going to take a certain number of courses that we need teachers for. So whether they take, you know, advanced biology or whether they take zoology is irrelevant. We have to staff that course. So sometimes people look at it and say, well, if we just cut that course back, well, we could save a lot of money. That's not necessarily true because the kids will elect something else and we have to staff that. So sometimes it's not as simple as looking at the program of studies and saying, wow, they offer all these things. And the other thing is you just look at our program of studies, particularly at the high school level, not all those courses are offered every year. So they may be in there, but if we have enrollment that's too low, we won't offer it. Sometimes we offer courses with small enrollments, but we have a number of electives that are in the program of studies that they don't run because we don't have an enrollment to justify it. But I'd be interested in looking at that.
Okay, thanks for your comments.
Okay, thank you.
All right. I see a hand. Julie Gottlieb, followed by Gaylord. One more hand. We'll take you. Rich, number 3. Mark, number 4. I ask you to please line up so we can get this moving.
Tip off.
Tip off. 10 minutes.
All set? Julie Gottlieb, District 6. For the benefit of some of us that may have not been, for the benefit of some of us that have not been following this in excruciating detail, you've showed, thank you. You've showed, just follow me around. You showed several slides that covered a fairly extensive list of cost containment measures. Can you be specific and pull out some of the things that you've already had to cut in the proposed budget we're looking at now that allowed you to keep it flat, you know, ex pension and health care insurance?
Are you talking about?
What's already come out in the, when you look at this goes back to 2010.
Right.
So what I'm looking for is, obviously, you've taken things out in the one we're looking at now. What's already come out that's going to have an impact that we should be aware of?
Well, one thing you should know is that virtually all of the reductions that were taken in the big budget cut in June of 2011 are still gone. Right? So when we took things out, and that was the big year that a lot of this stuff happened, I mean, that stuff's not back in this budget. And believe me, I was looking for an opportunity to try to restore some of those cuts. I have a small proposal in there, I don't know if it'll survive, to be able to keep the libraries open 4 days a week after school instead of 2, and to service our computer labs at the high school for student use, because both those directly impact students, and it's about a $25,000 incremental cost. But other than that, if you go back to the list of cuts from 10-11, those are still gone. So that entire list is still out of there. So you're looking at the late buses that we cut completely out of the high school. We reduced them at the middle school. You look at a lot of the support staff that we reduced there. Those positions haven't come back. We did a massive restructuring, forced restructuring of our technology sort of repair services. We lost about 5 positions there. Those aren't back. So really, if you go back to the list there, that gives you a flavor for what we could back in. And I know I had board members who told me flat out, you know, we'd love to see you try to get this back or that back. And I had to say, when I brought the budget out this year, I'm sorry, I agree, I'd love to bring it back. Can't be done. You know, there were people that wanted to bring the full world language program back at the elementary level. You know, that never got out of the box. So that kind of stuff is just, it's still not there. And I don't know when, if it'll ever come back, but that gives you a flavor for it. That was $2.8 million worth of cuts right there.
Thank you.
I feel like saying, Mother, may I? Gaylord Meyer, District 1. I have a couple of questions. You know, you were talking about cost saving, and I was going through the budget, and I know I asked the same question from Mr. Tetro, and that is outsourcing. And I was looking specifically at things like your payroll, your custodial service, your maintenance service. Is that something that you have considered doing? And if so, what is the cost benefit to doing that?
The answer is we do look at that. We have union contracts that, and all those services that you just mentioned are all covered by union contracts that generally have a prohibition against outsourcing, which means we need to negotiate that. And we have attempted to make some inroads there with a couple of the bargaining units that I really don't want to get into in public, because we think there may be some savings in there. But I don't think you're going to see the wholesale outsourcing of custodial maintenance services anytime soon. I will say there are quite a few things we do outsource. It's not uncommon. We outsource all of our OT and PT services, occupational therapy and physical therapy services. And in fact, Andrea Leonardi has done a marvelous job working with our contractor to rein those costs in, and actually has saved quite a bit of money. It's one of the items on that list. And so that was, you know, we're able to outsource there because of the nature of the workforce. Of course, our whole bus contract is outsourced. You know, that's an area where we've done that. But there's no guarantee in outsourcing that you're going to, you know, save money. We have looked at it as an example. Our most recent look at outsourcing had to do with substitutes, substitute teachers, because you can't hire a company. I did it in my last district, where hire a Kelly Services type company. So rather than having substitute teachers as sort of a seasonal or part-time employees of yours, they become employees of Kelly Services. And what we found in that analysis was that the overhead they charge you for that was really prohibitive, and that your cost per substitute teacher per day were going to go up 45 to 50%. And so we didn't see that as cost benefit, you know, favorable. So I guess my answer is yes, we look at it. We're constantly looking at it, and we're trying to make inroads on it where we can.
Okay. And I hope that you will continue to negotiate with those unions that we're no longer going to pay these prices. That's from the constituents' point of view.
Yeah, no, we have some elements. I mean, for example, there are grounds. There's some elements of, say, the grounds work. That some of it's done in-house and some of it is outsourced. So we do have some hybrid relationships as well.
That takes me to the next question. Speaking of joint services, you and the town share IT and technology?
No.
Well, the
We don't.
IT, no?
We both have it.
You both have it. And in the breakout, is it cost prohibitive to do it as one, or to do it separately, or to make it so that public process, so I can understand it? How's that?
Yeah. Nancy Burns has been here quite a while as our technology manager. Maybe she could give you more details offline about that, but there was an attempt to do that a number of years ago. There are certain synergies you'd think would result from that, but my understanding is that didn't go well and it wasn't saving any money. We do have unionized employees on both sides of the shop on that, and we have different benefit packages. You know, Board of Ed employees right now, for example, if the town were to take it, a Board of Ed employees right now, none of our employees receives any subsidy or any post-retirement health insurance benefits. That whole OPEB thing is all town, okay? So if you took and added to the town employee list and subtracted from the Board of Ed list, then all of a sudden you're creating an OPEB liability on the town side. And then if you put the town folks over on our side, there might be other issues. So it's not quite as simple as combining and looking for overlapping in services. As I said, we've streamlined our technology services in the last 3 years. We're open to continuing to look at that. I know Mr. Tetro is open to looking at that. And just because it didn't go well the last time doesn't mean it wouldn't go well this time. But it's a pretty complex situation. Now, we also should say we do have some areas where we do cooperate on technology. The disaster relief, that's a bad one, that sounds like FEMA. Disaster recovery is a joint effort. And in fact, both the board and the town have joined together on a cost-effective technology solution that I think you heard some about, maybe you heard in the technology arena, and Nancy's really been spearheading that. So there are areas where we are working jointly in the technology area, but I don't know if combining staff is going to give you any bang for the buck.
Okay. One other quick question, and maybe you, some of my constituents and people in general have emailed saying that they're concerned about programs that are being offered and that there are anywhere from 4 to 8 kids in a class. Could you clarify that for me, please?
Yeah, 4 would be really low. I mean, we do track very closely classes that have fewer than 15 students in them.
Okay.
And we have to do that sometimes for a variety of reasons. First of all, there's a lot of courses that only 6, 8 kids sign up for, and as I mentioned before, we don't offer them. They get cut, we don't have the staff for them, and out they go. And they're just asked to select a different elective. So that happens every year in just about every department. When we're left with courses that have small enrollments, it's usually for one of several reasons. One is it's often the sort of culminating course in a sequence of courses. For example, we have a math course that actually is beyond calculus and that our students are ready for. And there may only be 8 or 10 students that are qualified for that course. It would be a huge disservice to those students who are highest achieving students to not offer that and say, sorry, we're not offering that anymore. Sometimes what we do when we have some courses, this happens often in world languages, is you might have a level 5 and a level 4 course, we might combine those. And the kids will stay in the same course for 2 years, they'll do different curriculum, so we try to combine wherever we can. But if you have a run-of-the-mill elective that only has 4 or 5 kids in it, generally we won't run that. Sometimes you'll get sections of a course just through the quirk of the schedule, where there could be 24 in this class, 24 in this class, and 14 in this class, just because of the mathematics of the schedule. So one class shows up as under, but others are higher.
I understand also that, you know, it's to offer, let's say, for AP, and you only have 8 kids that really need it. Have you, or maybe you've already thought about this, because I know you're a smart guy, is
Thank you.
internet as a way of filling that gap?
We're actually we're starting to look at that.
Okay.
We've invested in some software. It's in the infant stages of it. That's actually called Plato.
Okay.
And we're offering it in very limited circumstances right now because there's been a lot of missteps on online courses.
Okay.
Sometimes kids aren't ready to do it on their own. You still need a teacher to guide them. And if you need to pay a teacher to guide them, then you're paying the same as if you didn't have an online course. Obviously, you still need a teacher at the helm somewhere. I'm not saying you can completely get rid of it. But it has some promise, but some districts that have gone out with it have found that sometimes there's unintended consequences that aren't very good educationally. So we're on it. It may pay off, a year or two down the road. Right now, we're using it in specialized situations. For example, we have some students who are eligible for homebound instruction for, say, a medical reason. They break their leg, they're home for 4 weeks. We obligated to provide them. We've been able to cut back on our face-to-face tutoring time with those students because they're able to use the Plato software to stay up with their courses. So that's an example of where, we're not saving an FTE, but we are able to reduce our tutoring expenses in the, related services area and replace it with software.
Okay.
So we're trying to do it thoughtfully, and it does have some potential.
Okay, and I'll just follow up by saying that I hope that Mary or that we will have an opportunity to have update from Aon, and as well as maybe have them come and speak with us so that there's clarity for me.
Yeah, on the last question that you asked, at the back of the book where we analyze how many sections of each kind of course that will be offered next year, roughly 400 sections will be offered through various disciplines, and about 9 or 10% of them end up classes that are 15 or below. And the list of reasons why that David mentioned are listed there, so if constituents ask, the number is about 9% of the total sections that are offered, and it's a lot of times because of scheduling and all the reasons David mentioned.
Thank you.
Representative Lee, did he? Go ahead, Representative Walk.
Jay Walk, District 6. Gaylord, that was a great question to Dr. Title about integrating IT with the town and the Board of Ed. I just have a quick question. Would that be because it would be difficult to do because of privacy issues? In other words, two different servers that you'd have to have with special ed children, and I mean, it would be pretty difficult
I'm not saying,
to do, right?
I don't know if that's a limiting factor there or not.
More in the classroom type teaching.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, thanks.
Yeah. I would say our average class size at the high school level is 20. So.
This is actually more of in the line of a comment. And Joe, your point on the health insurance is well taken. But, I've been following this internal service fund thing. And the other night, I asked Mr. Tetro how we were doing in the ISF. And if I recall correctly, he said there were long-term obligations with something like $5 million in the red. And at the Board of Finance meeting, there were some people who wanted to view the experience as, as positive. Can we keep cutting it back? The point that Chairman Flynn made was that we don't have that reserve to fund that. We've been fortunate to see favorable experience, but we also saw some unfavorable experiences. And one of those things, it's like you're betting on the weather. And I'm not known as a fiscal conservative, but I'm just a little concerned that if we go too far that way, then they're going to find themselves in a hole, and that money's got to come from somewhere. So that's just something I felt needed to be said.
Okay. Representative Patton, then Representative McCarthy.
Dr. Title, to other people's points about, and your own about all the health insurance reductions, mostly on through the Board of Selectmen side over the last month, and the reductions that you've found. Have most of those reductions been found due to research on you or Doreen or any of your staff, or is that an Aon, are those Aon-directed things? I know Aon is kind of looking at stuff now, but I guess my question is almost the opposite of what some other people are asking. We've made cuts already, and are we sure that those cuts are safe because we have or have not heard from Aon that those calculations are accurate?
Yeah, all of this is starts with Aon, and they take, on the experience side, let's bucket this into two different points. One is experience, and one has to do with the bidding process. So on the experience side, we do our budget at a point in time. Aon looks at the prior 12 months' experience and forecasts what we need to, what our projected expenses are going to be for the rest of the current fiscal year and into the next fiscal year. So we base all of our budgeting on the Aon recommendations. Now, you might disagree with how they do it, or you might agree with how they do it, but they're the experts. So basically, we take what Aon says, we think you're going to spend $30 million on health insurance for the next year. We then calculate how much money we're going to collect in premium cost share from our employees, which roughly on the Board of Ed side is 20%. And we look at other revenue, and the difference is what we put in our budget. As Aon updates those projections, they come up with a new figure for the 12 months we're budgeting. And then we run that through the same exercise and come up with updated figures. So as they've done that, based on January and February experience, we've met with them, the town's met with them, they produce a report for the town, a report for the board, and we come to agreement around that, because we've tried to work cooperatively with the town on what we actually budget for health insurance, so we don't end up in the position that Mr. Lee was discussing, where you get overly aggressive about your health insurance cut and then find out that 2 bad months of experience wipes it out. So I'm not a health insurance expert, although I play one on TV. And so we rely on Aon to give us those numbers. And similarly, on the bidding procedure, Aon did all the bidding under the direction of the town purchasing department, of course, and they came back with hard bid numbers on administrative costs and the cost of the stop-loss insurance. Those are fixed costs that are right out of pocket for the town and the Board of Ed, and that's where that chunk of $343 for the board and $400 for the town came from. They have a separate calculation for your carrier change. And that's where we're still trying to hone in on exactly what the right number is there. And I'm saying it's in the vicinity of $500,000. It could be plus or minus $100,000 from that number. So that's still a work in progress. But it's all based on Aon. We don't make any independent decisions. We don't say, well, Aon thinks our experience is going to be 20% more next year, but we know better than them, so we're only going to budget 10%. That's way too risky for me.
So the calculations that were determined for the budget proposed in January versus what happened in March is all based on what your meetings with Aon over
Exactly.
the several months in that time?
Yes.
So you're sure, as far as at least what they're concerned, that all those cuts that have been made so far are pretty safe?
They all comport with exactly Aon's latest projections, and keeping 1 times the IBNR in the reserve fund, which is the standard that Aon recommends that we keep. So yeah, we're not freelancing here. Because look, if I could have freelanced, I would have reduced their number back when I brought it out. I didn't want to bring out 4.83%. I would have said, you're off by $2 million, let's cut it. I can't really do that. So, because let's face it, if it goes south, it's their fault. Right?
And we have to pay for it, but okay.
Well, or reap the benefit of it. For a number of years, the Board of Ed experience on health insurance was very favorable, and we built up quite a balance in there. And it is all part of the big internal service fund. And we're part of the town, so we want to be good partners, and we want to fund in cooperation with the town. It is an area where we cooperate. But at the same time, we've basically eaten through that surplus. And now we're down to bare bones, and so we have to build it up in the budget proposal.
And just what we've been hearing, the 2002 experience data, the number of people who have had very large claims has almost doubled, which is where all that scary stuff
That's
came
where
from.
all was, and now that's starting to, as they say in statistics, regress to the mean. So I think that we're starting to see an arc of this. But whether it will come all the way back down or whether it will level off and go back up, nobody knows. It's a crystal ball.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Oh, Phil wants to comment on health insurance.
Only one quick comment. You took note that Dr. Title did not answer Mark's question, are you sure? I remind you what your labor attorney said, we are self-insured. We pay the claims that come to us, and as soon as we adopt a budget, smile, things could get worse, so I smiled, and sure enough, things got worse. So as soon as we adopt a budget, we could go south on our claims experience. So, that is the best judgment we have from Aon currently. But we can't project with any assuredness other than based on the professional advice that we have. So there's no promises, if you will, based on the health insurance.
Yeah. That always goes bad. Two quick questions, Dr. Title. The first one, it's kind of a silly question. I have to ask it anyway. On your deck, you had a bar chart indicating the distribution of FTEs and staff. And the largest bar was, of course, teacher-certified staff. I'm just curious, all of the FTEs indicated by those bar charts, are they all functionally in teacher positions?
Well, they're either in classroom teaching positions or they're other certified positions. They may not be classroom teachers, but they hold teacher certification. We actually distinguish in our budget between those two types of positions, but for the purpose of this chart, they were combined. So, yeah. Those are all individuals,
Just took my glasses off and
they're all individuals who hold teacher certification. They're not all simply classroom teachers.
okay. So, in terms of boots in the ground facing those students, what percent of those staff FTEs or certified teachers would you say are represented by that distribution?
Well, they're all boots on the ground facing students. They may not all be standing in front of a class of 24 kids in the morning saying, "Good morning, boys and girls." They may be people working with students in small groups for support. They may be students working, they could be guidance counselors. They could be social workers. They could be your favorite subject, school psychologists. They could be any number. All of those individual categories that I just described, they all serve students directly. Some of them work with individual or small groups. Some of them work with a whole class. But
So
they
they could
all
be,
directly service students.
Curriculum leaders and liaisons?
Curriculum leaders are administrators.
Okay, all right, so I get it, okay, so it's, but can you offer a percent in terms of the good morning student, or?
I don't want to hazard a guess off the top of my head. I said, we've got people that, we've got high school teachers that teach 110 kids a day, and we've got some people that work with a very intense set of maybe special needs students who work with 3 students a day, and the jobs are equally challenging and demanding and valuable.
Fair enough, I'm not asking you to cut this with a scalpel, a chainsaw
Right.
is good for now.
Right.
The other question, and I think you already preemptively answered this one, but I'm going to ask it anyway because I ask it of every department head. In the event that this body were to cut further from the Board of Ed budget, what would that represent in terms of services not provided? And what scares me is what you outlined is a quote-unquote phantom cut where I'd just be paying that out of another pocket, if you will.
Well, when people talk about service reductions, okay, as a code word, not as a code word, but as a real word,
Well,
right?
as they
Service
discussed
reduction.
openly in the Board of Finance, we
Right.
are a service
Right.
provider of the
Yeah.
town, and so we understand what that means. It's,
Right. So what
it's
ends
scary.
up,
So, but-
you end up reducing the FTE count for the people that provide those services. You provide less of the service.
less hours or something.
Less hours, less of a program. Doesn't necessarily mean you wipe something out entirely. But whenever you're talking about service reductions, there are employees that are providing those services. And if we don't have another position to place those people, then they get laid off. And that's what happened last time. So, you're running the risk here because, as you saw, we are so close on this budget right now that we're running out of places. You're not going to get to any. If you cut more, we're out of snipping around the edges anywhere. Now, look, if we get a health insurance miracle between now and May 7th, then maybe we can all, take a big sigh of relief. So I'm setting that aside. Let's just suppose there's no change in the health insurance. Or that it's not prudent to make a change in the health insurance. Say experience gets a little better, but we say, let's not take that risk. Let's leave that in the kitty. Then you're into service reductions. Service reductions are provided by employees. That's what happens. I can't really be any more specific than that because it's not possible to do at this moment.
Understood. I'm looking for a silver bullet still.
Well, I mean, this budget's at 1.85%. We gave it the office.
Well, the taxpayers are saying the same thing, too. So
No, I understand.
Yeah, I know you know.
Believe me. I mean, that's why when I created this budget initially and handed it to the board, we did everything in our power to reduce every line item to as close to zero as possible. And some things are just out of your control, and you're just between a rock and a hard place.
Yeah.
Yep.
So say we all.
I understand.
Yeah, I know you do.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thanks, Tom. Now Jerry's got to fix the damage you did.
Cheap insurance.
Chris Macklis, District 5. Could Could you dig a little in history? Because I seem to recall in past years there was some issue with your budget where if you got to a certain point, you couldn't cut further. Like if we said we got you down to a 0 increase, that you actually couldn't go below that because it affects some kind of state funding, like the ECS sharing maybe? And I don't remember what that...
Yeah, it's called the minimum budget requirement. The minimum budget requirement, as it's currently in the statute, means you cannot allocate less next fiscal year than you allocated to us this fiscal year. That's it.
So if we do that, then if for some reason enough people get the budget cuts down to a 0 for your side of the budget, we run the risk of losing state funding.
If you go below 0, the state will intervene and tell you to allocate more money to get it up to the minimum.
That's what I thought.
The only exception to that, which will not apply to us, because you might see some other districts where, hey, they actually went below that, there's an exception for districts that have experienced declining enrollment. We are not one of those districts.
Good enough.
Good evening, Dr. Title, Peter Ambrose, District 2. Last year, we anticipated, your budget anticipated, 10 to 12 staff reductions or retirements. What do you anticipate now to be the number of reductions or retirements?
Right, we had a lot of discussion about that last year. And we had previously, historically, the district had budgeted 10 to 12 retirements. And the last 2 years, we'd experienced over 20. And so this year, what we did was we went back and looked at the 5-year average and ended up taking 16. Now, whether that will pan out or not, I'm out on a giant limb, because for every retirement, we budget a savings of a differential of an average of $35,000. Difference between somebody on the scale and somebody not, or difference in the pay schedule. If that turns out to not occur, you're not likely to give me more money to make up the difference. So what we, and here's the thing that may have happened, and you know, I will tell you right now, we have like 2. Nervous here, because a lot of people do retire later in the year, is there was a bottleneck of retirements, I guess would be my hypothesis on this, or theory, that in 08, 09, and 9, 10, a lot of teachers didn't retire because of the economy. They might have been counting on a supplemental annuity from a 403B. It had just been cut in half. They couldn't do it. They were nervous. They weren't able to afford their health care, and they didn't retire. And then as things started to get better and as they got older, they maxed their retirement, and we just had this, you know, herd of buffalo retirement, right? It was like the stampede scene in Lion King. So what happened there was, you know, maybe we've hit that. You know, maybe that's over with. And maybe we're not going to get the 20 and 22 anymore. So I didn't want to go that high. But we did up it to 16. And, you know, we're on the hook for that number. And I don't see that being a source of any help right now. In fact, you know, I'm a little nervous about it.
Fair enough. Thank you.
Ann Stamler, District 5. Referring back to some comments made by Representative McKenzie, I believe, who quite rightly pointed out that what we're looking at is reducing the growth in our budget, not reducing the budget necessarily, though that might also be desirable. I just wanted to be sure I understood one of the slides, one of the new slides.
Okay, you get an A.
Actually, it had to be new because it refers to actions since the Board of Finance. Okay. The budget at a glance as of April 3rd, 2013, which incorporates the Board of Education recommended budget increase, goes through the reductions, and comes out as of last, I guess it would be Wednesday or Thursday, Wednesday. In that list, the total reduction, in the total increase to date is 1.85%, of which other accounts are negative 0.2%, right? So that means that your budget as of today not including health insurance and pension, all other funds, is actually below the approved fiscal year 13 budget, or am I misreading that?
No, it's not below the approved fiscal year 13 budget. If you take the fiscal year 13 budget and add in our required health insurance and pension costs, the proposed fiscal year 14 budget will not cover those. So we'll need to cut things to make the difference up.
Okay, so you will be reducing your all other accounts.
Correct.
Okay. Now, if the, of the 1.25 million that the Board of Finance reduced your budget, if 500,000 of that should in fact be gained through further improvement in health claims experience, then that negative 309,603 would become a positive 2
Correct.
something.
Now, I just want to say, when I refer to the 500,000, that would be as a result of changing carriers, not assuming a health insurance improvement.
Okay, so it's an improvement in the carrier cost.
Yes, by changing carriers, that's the first number out of the chute from Aon, but I said it's subject to further, refinement, and the number could be different from that, but that's a good working number right now. So yeah, that would get us, that essentially would allow us to move some of that $1,250,000 that's under other accounts up into the health insurance line.
Thank you for the correction and
Yeah.
the clarification.
Yep.
Do we have any other members of the body that haven't asked a question? Sorry. Representative Marks.
You can go if you'd like. Out of deference, no. Go for it. Thank you. Might have a question. All right. My question will last about 2 hours, so might as well take a seat. There you go. Thank you, Alan Marks, District 8. There's been a lot of talk today about insurance and health care and saving money on health care costs. I'm not sure if this question is for you, Dr. Title, or for Mr. Dwyer.
You can take it.
There was a letter to the editor in one of the local papers last week that talked about the health insurance premiums and benefits of the employees of central office. Were you familiar with that? Or with that letter? No?
I'm not.
Okay. Well, the letter talked about that it was a very generous plan, et cetera, and that my understanding is that that group of employees is not covered by any of the collective bargaining agreements. And I'm just curious as to who is responsible for negotiating those health insurance costs, and who's making sure that that is the best in the best interest of the town that those plans are negotiated.
All right, well, first, we have some employees in central office that are covered by bargaining units. So you're talking about the non-bargaining unit employees. This issue came up last spring, and we looked at that because there's been some history there, and very similar to the discussion that you had with Mary Carol Merrilees at the end is, do you follow the bargaining unit contract and have the raises kept up and so on and so forth. There were a number of years where central office employees took zeros and unionized people got raises and so forth. But we looked at that, and we substantially increased the premium cost share for central office employees. In fact, we increased it to the point where there were some central office employees whose entire raises were wiped out by that premium cost share increase. So we raised central office employees' premium cost share by 4 percentage points in one fell swoop, and we'll be looking at that each year to catch them up so that they're more on par with the unionized counterparts. So the issue has been addressed at my level, and we put together a game plan, but there was some historical practice that just wasn't fair to unwind in one fell swoop.
Right. So when you say the premium cost share, the amount that those particular employees are contributing to their health.
Yes, the premium cost share means the percentage of the premiums that the employees contribute.
Right. And so this is something that you're responsible for?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
But it's also the plan you're covered under, is it not?
It is the plan. I actually did it to myself.
Okay.
Yeah. Yep.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Just a comment. Thank you for taking us through the slideshow and walking us through some of the numbers. And I think over the last 3 budgets, at least, we've definitely seen a decline in the growth of spending, or a slowing of the growth of spending. And I think you've done a great job. Zero-based budgeting. You had a great list of things where we've saved money. But if you go back to the year 2000 through 2009, and if, I just did some calculation, but it looked like about a 7.8% increase each year on average. That's not your responsibility, but that's what you inherited, unfortunately. Again, the comment is that because of the, let's say, lack of discipline from the Board of Ed during that time period, this is basically placing limitations on you right now. And unfortunately, we talked a little bit about what's coming next year, potentially. So this kind of urgency to keep spending down and control the increases is still, it hasn't gone away. So we talked a little bit about some, collaborating with the town on IT, DPW. There's some things that are already happening, and we brought that up the other night with the DPW and the IT. But I just wanted to say that there still needs to be a sense of urgency on this. This is an ongoing problem that we're having, meaning our drivers are forcing increases that are unpredictable. So next year, again, we could have an experience where we don't get these savings. And so just wanted to make that comment. And that's really what I think has been, well, let's say, be the driver of any other decisions that we make, is how are we going to slow the growth for next year, keep our baseline down so we can absorb, taxpayers can absorb, quite frankly, any unpredictable increases with some of these variable costs we have. So.
Yeah, we're always looking for that, Joe. And, if we don't have the fixed cost increases, then you see me present a much lower budget. And last year, my budget out of the chute was 2.6%. I didn't look, because we had a favorable year in a couple of places. So I didn't look at that and go, aha, we only got 2.6%. Let's add a whole bunch of stuff in here and get the thing up to 4. Okay? That didn't happen. Came in at 2.6. People said, whoa, it's the lowest number we've ever seen. And then they cut it. So if you want me to keep bringing out low numbers, but you keep whacking away at them, I lose the incentive to give you low numbers. So like in behavioral terms, you got to reward this behavior.
That's a comment made at 9:45 at night, so thank you for laughing at it.
You heard me at midnight.
John Mottola, District 2. And I respectfully disagree with Mr. Palmer's assessment that there was a lack of discipline by the Board of Education, at least when I was on it. And by the way, this body approved most of those budgets, so there was a lack of discipline. This body shared in that lack of discipline, but I categorically disagree with that. It's hard to compare something that happened in 2004 to what's happening today. It was just we all know it was a different world back then. So, and we had our population increasing from a student standpoint, and it's still increasing. So, I do agree with Mr. Palmer that we need to be as prudent as possible with all of our budgets. And I think since at least 2009 and before that, the Board of Ed has been that way. So, and I thank Dr. Teitel for coming in. He is right that he comes in with low numbers, and I can tell you, to be honest with you, that prior to him being here, there was a sense that maybe some of the Board of Ed budgets were slightly inflated because the Board of Ed at that time knew that there would be cuts to it. But I don't think that's been the case over the last 4 years or so. So, thank you.
Heather Dean, District 4. I'd like to piggyback on the comment from Representative Mottola and point out that prior to 2000, well, let me preface it with, I appreciate that you're keeping monies in with the repair and maintenance. I think that's very important, and you're right, deferring it isn't cost savings, because in the end, it costs us a whole lot more. And to that point, prior to 2000, maintenance was deferred exponentially every year for many years, and it cost us big time with repairs to buildings. In particular, McKinley School, if you remember, was infested with mold, essentially, from failure of maintenance, and had to be raised and rebuilt. So I just want to remind the body of that. Thank you.
Any further questions from the body before we go to public comment? Seeing none, if I could ask members of the public if they wish to make comments tonight, if you would line up, and if... Yes. We're having public comment. And I just want to remind the public that we will take public comment at our April 22nd meeting as well. Thank you. Well, you may need to answer. Good evening.
Hi, my name is Lisa Havey. I live at 216 Longview Avenue, and I'm speaking on behalf of Fairfield PTA Council. We serve over 9,000 members, 9,600 members, and I just respectfully ask that you hold these cuts. You hold the reductions. This is going to be really challenging. There's nothing I wish I had the magic statement to make you understand how devastating this will be. But in lieu of that, I ask you for your consideration. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Hi there, Matt Hutzman, Pansy Road. I just want to echo what Dr. Teitel said. Leave us alone. I mean, I think considering that $4.5 million has already been cut from the budget already, what I'm sort of hearing from some RPTM members is they're sort of looking, they're asking Dr. Teitel, can you cut as much as you can and not make it, not let us get the blame? I mean, in a way, I would, look, obviously as a parent, I want it to be as minimal to my children as possible, but I'd also, in a way, I'd like to maybe see Dr. Teitel, if there's cuts, that there should be a sign up front of the school that said these cuts are brought to you by, because I'm just, you can only cut so far, and it's going to cut, you know, the low-hanging fruit is gone. I mean, if, you know, we're not getting, my kids are not getting, there's not an iPad in every pet. I mean, you know, these are all healthcare and boring stuff like that, which don't really, you know, benefit my children. So, I mean, I just, you know, you've gotten your pound of flesh, you've gotten your 10 pounds of flesh, so just leave it alone. You know, I understand affordability, but, you know, I bought my house in Fairfield because of the schools. You know, my house is underwater, not in a sandy way, I mean like an underwater mortgage kind of way. So I will be here for a very long time, and the person that buys my house will likely have kids in school, and I don't want them to pick up a paper and said, you know, $5 million cut out of the budget. It's just, it's not good for my property values. I know people keep saying property taxes is lowering values. I don't really agree with that, but school values are important. I mean, there's lots of places you can live that don't have good schools, that have cheap property taxes. I live in Fairfield because of the schools, and many people do. And this argument that only 30% people benefit from the school is just garbage. I mean, we all benefit from a good school system. Even if you don't have children or you're an empty nester, the people that are going to buy your house are likely going to be have children in the school system, or will likely have children in the school system. So, you know, the Board of Finance, Mr. Walsh said that he thinks that there should be increases in class sizes from K through 2 in the Board of Finance meeting. I mean, to me, the idea that you're going to take, you know, that my 5-year-old has to have a higher class size for, you know, for what's already only a 2% budget increase, it's just, I think that's disgraceful. I think taking that out of our youngest students, our youngest residents, is not what this town should be about. I think we should be about, you know, going forward and offering good education and not trying to squeeze, you know, blood out of a rock. I think the cuts are enough. I think they're more than enough. And I think they should, I know this body wants to establish its authority and all that stuff, and, you know, and the Fairfield taxpayers are sending 10,000 emails a day, but, I mean, enough is enough.
Thank you, Matt.
Mary Hogue, 165 Stonewall Lane. My one concern in hearing the majority of the comments tonight from people asking about the budget and where we could cut is that I'm concerned about the value that we're getting. And, you know, whenever you look at something, you want to make sure that you're getting your best return on your investment. And I'm concerned that we're spending so much time wondering how much something costs and not making sure that if we cut anything, not just, we're talking education, we want to make sure that it's quality. We're getting quality out of this educational system. If we cut too much, we will definitely be cutting the quality. My understanding is we already are looking at that. We already are cutting into services. We are already cutting the quality. How much further do we cut the quality? Do we cut the money so that we are affordable and get poor quality? We don't want to go too far. We really don't. We've already gone past the point. We've already gone past the point of inflation. We've already gone past the point of the amount of services that can be retained. We're cutting beyond that. So I really want you to consider that. That's an important component of your thought process. I hope you'll take that in mind.
Thank you.
I don't know if I want to move this. Hi, I'm Carolyn Trabucco, 221 Sherwood Farm Road. I guess that puts me in District 3. I appreciate the comment of when you have 55% of the budget, you should look for efficiencies. And I was curious through this entire process, starting from the very first budget meeting Dr. Title had in this room, of whether or not this budget would be viewed as too much money to spend, or a budget that was incredibly lean and efficient on the services and the education side and simply had a high burden of healthcare costs and other items that were out of control. I'm delighted to have seen this budget work its way through the town bodies as we've gone through the period of time to better articulate and understand what that healthcare component cost may actually look like. I ask you respectfully to look apart from that at whether or not this is an efficient budget. In my view, when you have increasing enrollment, it's very difficult to have outright cost reductions because your primary driver to your budget is going to be your enrollment. I'm proud to be in a town that still has increasing enrollment. So I would encourage you, please, to look through this and recognize it for being a very efficient budget proposal that happens to have a high healthcare cost component that is being better understood as we go along. And please don't try to mess with what I think is a really very efficiently presented budget. Thank you.
Thank you, Carolyn. Good evening.
Kelly Dunn, can you hear me?
Yes, I just want to make sure if there are any further members of the public that wish to make a comment, that if you could line up over here so we can see how many more people will want to speak before we go back to the body. Thank you.
Okay. Kelly Dunn, 205 Tuckahoe Lane. We've heard a lot of comments tonight. We've heard a lot of your comments. We've heard a lot of public comments, or at least a few. And I think the one thing that I don't think is emphasized enough is that the Board of Finance has cut money. The Board of Finance cut $1.25 million this past week. That is a significant amount of money, given what's going on. And that's way beyond, it gets way beyond the health care. So I don't want people always just pointing to the health care because that's not all that's going on here. Thank you.
Thank you. Seeing no further members of the public making comments, back to the body. Do we have any other further questions for our presenters this evening before we end this evening? Seeing none, I want to thank Dr. Title, his staff, members of the Board of Education for your wonderful presentation, and members of the body for being so generous to one another and lining up without being asked. Thank you.